Hello everyone, welcome back. Hope you've had a good week. We are in National Hispanic Heritage Month. I like to do these National Month celebrations because I fully believe it's important to widen our knowledge of different cultures. Plus, there are just some really freaking cool stories out there. Who would have guessed? America is not the only country with awesome stories. Other countries have awesome flippin' stories. This one is no different. So, Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the cultures of Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. For our first stop, we are going to the beautiful country of Mexico to talk about a woman who was way ahead of her time, especially when it comes to what she did for her job. Juana Inés de la Cruz. Let's get started. Now, before we begin, I will be doing my best to pronounce these Spanish words and names. If I mispronounce them, please don't come after me. I'm doing my best. Okay, where the heck was she born? Juana Inés Hesbete y Ramirez de Santillana.
Yeah, I did that right. I hope I close enough.
Was born on November 12th, 1648 or 1651 in San Miguel Nepantla, or present-day Tepelixpa, Mexico. Now I can't pronounce English words. She was the illegitimate daughter of
Don Pedro Manuel de Azuaje y Vargas Machuca,
who was a Spanish Navy captain from the Canary Islands, and her mother was
Doña Isabel Ramírez de Santillana y Rendón.
There's a reason why I'm doing this, because there's no way I'm going to say all of that. My stammer is good, I have it under control, but sometimes I just can't say words. She was a distinguished criollo, which is a term for a person of Spanish South and Central American, but especially is used for one of pure Spanish descent. Throughout this beginning stage of her life, remember that Mexico is still a Spanish territory at this time and is called New Spain. From when she was a child, she had a passion for knowledge. She often hid in the Hacienda chapel to read her grandfather's books in a library, which was forbidden to girls. By the age of three, she had learned how to read and write Latin. By age 5, she could do accounts, so she's good with numbers already to do accounting by age 5. 8, she did a poem on the Eucharist, aka the Blessed Sacrament, aka Holy Communion, aka the Lord's Supper. By age 8, she's that smart. By the age of 13, she's teaching Latin to kids, mastered Greek logic, which is basically the study of reasoning and argumentation in subjects like linguistics, philosophy, and mathematics. And the mathematic parts can look like this, and that just makes my brain... She also learned at 13... You ready for this? Casually learned the language of Nahuatl, which was a people's native of the Aztecs. And after that, decided to write short poems in said language. Because why not learn an Aztec people's language? Got nothing better to do. Going back to when Juana was 8, her beloved grandfather died. So at either age 8, 13, or 16, I couldn't find which one was which, she was sent to live with her mom's aunt in Mexico City. But what I do know is when Juana was 16 in 1664, she wanted to go to college, but women were forbidden to go to school, basically period, at this time in Mexico. But Juana had a very cool way to cheat the system. She asked her mom for permission to disguise as a man so she could go to the local college. Brilliant, sure. But her mom said no. So not having the ability to get a formal education, she continued her private studies. By this point, news of Juana's incredible smarts had spread throughout the city. With that and her family's influential position, she was given the position on the court of... And you'll understand why I'm doing this.
Don Antonio Sebastián de Toledo dos Marqueses of Mancera.
Yeah, as a lady-in-waiting to his wife...
Viceren Leonora María del Carreto.
This couple was known as the living images of monarchs in Spain. So if you impressed them and got into their circle, They were a good friend to have on speed dial. At some point, they wanted to test their knowledge. I couldn't find if it was before she entered the court or after she entered the court, but point is, they wanted to test her knowledge. I would too, if I had learned that a 16-year-old coming into my court randomly learned an Aztec language at the age of 13. That sounds fake. So, Antonia's court invited 40 scholars to a meeting in which they tested Juana on various scientific and literary subjects. But mind you, this is a girl who taught herself Aztec on a Thursday for fun. So this test, she passed with flying colors. And the manner she presented herself astonished everyone there and greatly increased her popularity and reputation in the court. So much so that her accomplishments in literacy got her fame throughout New Spain. She was admired all throughout the viceregal court, and this attention got her several marriage proposals. Now, this was her first which path you want to take challenge. She could have chosen to get married, have some kids, and live a comfortable life. However, that path would not allow her to continue her studies at a college level. Or she could continue her studies at the level she wanted, but she had to become a nun. I think you know which one she chose. Juana entered the monastery at the convent of the Discalced Carmelites of St. Joseph of Mexico in August of 1667, where she was a postulant or candidate and was there for a few months till she left on November 18th, mainly because of their strictness. She went back to the court till she joined the convent of the Order of St. Jerome when she was 21 on November 15th, 1669. And it is at this convent that she would stay till her death. At this convent, she entered the monastery of the Hieronymite nuns, which were more laid back than other monasteries. And it is here where she changed her name to Sor, or Sister, Juana Inés de la Cruz. She probably took this name from Sor Juana de la Cruz Vasquez Gutierrez, who was a Spanish nun whose insane smarts earned her one of the few exceptions for a woman to preach in the gospel. She chose to become a nun so she could study whatever she wanted because she wished, quote, to have no fixed occupation which might curtail my freedom to study, end quote. This convent was one of the few places where women could pursue intellectual activity during this time in Mexico. Yes, it wasn't perfect, but it was better than all of the convents. At the convent as a nun, now Sister Juana got her own study and library, and she could often talk with scholars from the court and local university. Her small room was filled with scientific instruments, maps, and a ton of books. Over 4,000 volumes to be specific. And besides writing poems and plays, she wrote and studied music, natural science, and philosophy. She wrote poetry with topics like religion, love, environmentalism, and feminism. She turned her quarters into a salon or gathering place where famous intellectual female New Spain elites would visit her, like Maria Luisa Marique de Lara and Gonzaga, with whom it is thought that maybe there was a little love crush between the two, and it was so profound that Sister Juana wrote love poetry about it. There's no concrete evidence, but it is thought. And she was visited by both vicereines, basically wives of governors, of New Spain, and more. Sister Juana was not only a nun in the convent, she was also the convent's archivist and accountant. She was a music teacher at a nearby girls' school, and her library was one of the largest private libraries in the New World. I love that for so many reasons. Throughout her life, Sister Juana wrote over 200 works, mainly poems and villancicos or carols, and many were written for special occasions like birthdays, feasts, and funerals. Most of her work, it's hard to know when exactly they were made, but what we do know is that whatever she wrote soared to fame. She wrote many metaphorical religious dramas and entertaining cloak and dagger plays, which was a type of 17th century Spanish play. Many of the songs she composed would be sung in cathedrals in Mexico City, Oaxaca, and Puebla. One of her most famous, and my personal favorite, poems is called Hombres Necios, or Foolish Men. This work accuses men of their illogical behavior they use to criticize women. Here's an excerpt. You will thank me later. Quote, "Their favor and disdain you hold in equal state. If they mistreat you, you complain." Sorry. "You mock if they treat you well. No woman wins esteem of you. The most modest is ungrateful if she refuses to admit you. Yet, if she does, she's loose. You always are so foolish, your censor is unfair. One you blame for cruelty, the other for being easy. What must be her temper who oft ends when she's ungrateful and wearies when compliant? But with the anger and the grief that your pleasure tells, good luck to her who doesn't. End quote. And I just had to add this. Why be outraged at the guilt that is of your own doing? Have them as you make them, or make them what you will. End quote. Oh my God. I found the whole thing. Please go read it. It is one of the most poignant, beautifully said, men, we can't please you no matter what we do, poems I've ever met. I love it. Many of her love poems focus on a woman's disillusionment with love, pain, jealousy, conflict, and loneliness that comes from love and a broken heart. One of her poems, Sonnet 173, beautifully encompasses all this. Quote, do you see me, Alcino? Here I am caught in the chains of love, shackled in its irons, a wretched slave despairing of her freedom, and so far so distant from consolation? Do you see my soul filled with pain and anguish, wounded by torments so savage, so fierce, burned in the midst of living flames, and judging herself unworthy of her castigation? Do you see me without a soul, pursuing a folly I myself condemn as strange? Do you see me bleeding along the way as I follow the trail of an illusion? Are you very surprised? See then, Alcino, the cause of harm to me deserves much more. End quote. I got into that poem. Shoot. Arguably, her most famous, important, and difficult poem is called Primeiro Sueño, or First Dream, in 1692. This is a very long, personal, philosophical, universal, and descriptive poem, or Silvia. This is a form of Spanish poetry that has verses of 7 and 11 syllables. This is about the shadow of the night that a person goes to when they fall asleep in the quiet and silence of the night. She incorporates animals of the day and night and are either dozing off or are sleeping, are all urged into silence and rest by the Hellenistic Greek god of secrecy, confidentiality, and silence, Harpocrates. The poem focuses on not so much the dream world, but the world in between and the soul's journey during sleep. Here's an excerpt of the 21-page poem. It's long, but it's just beautiful word use. Quote, if its obtuse, spacious consonants induced peace and invited the members to rest. The silence imminent to the living, one and the other sealing dark lips with indicative finger. Harpocrates, the silent night, whose although not hard, although imperious precept, every one was obedient. The calm wind, the sleeping dog, this one lies, that one remains. Atoms do not move with the whisper, make fearing slight, although little sacrilegious noise, violator of calm silence. The sea no longer altered, not even the unstable rocked cerulean cradle where the sun slept, and the sleeping fish always mute in the beautiful beds of her dark cavernous breasts. They were silent twice. End quote. Now give me your interpretations in the comments of what she's saying. Mind you, it took me a good 5 minutes to get it all out because there's a lot of words that I've never heard of. That sounds really sad. But also, it's just such a ring of words. My brain can't keep up with the beautifulness of it. This entire 975-line poem is thick with intellect that shows Sister Juana's lifelong pursuit of learning. Like I said earlier, Sister Juana's non-religious studies got her a lot of criticism, but the current viceroy, Antonio, and his wife basically protected her, which in turn protected her from a lot of career-ending criticism and gave Sister Juana the freedom to study what she wanted, write what she wanted, and gave her the ability to publish her works. But when they left New Spain in 1688, she lost much of that protection. And with that loss, all criticism protection bets were off. And this next part is really crappy. Her downfall began in 1690. Sister Juana criticized a very famous 40-year-old sermon given by Portuguese Jesuit preacher Father Antonio Vieira. The sermon was on Christ's love, and he claimed that 3 church fathers didn't understand the meaning of Christ's proof or demonstrations of his love and questioned which of them was the greatest. Sister Juana didn't appreciate this and wrote her critique in a letter called the Athenagoric Letter, in which she criticizes Antonio's biblical scholarship, not of the Bible itself, and defended the men. She offered her own interpretations of the significance of Christ's sacrifice and God's demonstrations of love. Now, here's the thing. The Bishop of Puebla, Manuel Fernandez de Santa Cruz, knew Sister Juana had very strong feelings about the sermon and told her to put those feelings in writing. However, this guy sucks. He pretended to be impressed by her, and when she gave her letter to him, thinking it would be kept in private, this jerk published the letter without her knowledge or consent. You don't do that. Now, this guy already didn't like Sister Juana because of her educational pursuits. This was a kind of screw you to her and added his own critique to her critique, saying that she should focus on religious studies instead of non-religious studies, adding that, sure, he agreed with some of her criticisms. He believed that as a woman, she should devote herself to prayer and give up on her writings. Oh, and he published her letter and his response, not even under his own name. He impersonated a nun. The name was Sor Filotea de la Cruz, which translates roughly to Sister Godlover of the Cross. Anyway, in March of 1691, Sister Juana wrote a response letter called Response to Sister Filotea de la Cruz. In this letter, she says that she learned of several historical women and justifies that vast knowledge across subjects like rhetoric, logic, history, and physics, and that this knowledge is necessary to understand and learn from the Holy Scriptures, which I, for one, completely agree with it. She also defended a woman's right to have a formal education, advocated for their right to serve as intellectual authorities through not only writing, but publishing their works, saying that by putting women, mainly older women, in positions of authority, women could teach other women, and that by doing this could possibly avoid getting into dangerous situations involving male teachers in closed settings with young female students. Basically, she is advocating, hey, let us women give tips and learn from other women to other women, so that then the women don't get in trouble with men in close quarters with young girls. I don't know why that's a bad idea. And she basically thanked Manuel for criticizing her because now she could show everyone how smart she is. She even said that she'll give him more copies if he wanted, and also called him a coward. I love this woman. Even though this was an amazing, passionate rebuttal letter defending her right to educate herself and standing up to the misogyny ways of the church, the damage was done with her first letter, and the church censored her in that same year of 1691. She was reprimanded, ordered to stop writing non-religious texts. She could not publish any of her writings. Reading any of her writings was prohibited by the church, and she was forced to sell all of her library books. Remember, her library had more than 4,000 volumes of books. She also sold her scientific and musical instruments. There are other sources that say since she was so defiant to the church that led to the church confiscating all of her possessions. We just don't know. And to make this even more crappy, there is evidence that she agreed to undergo penance for her wrongdoings in 1693. In 1694, there is a document that has her name on it, but the tone of her writing isn't her. It's an oppressive, autocratic, rhetorical style instead of her normal, poetic, lyrical, expressional style of writing. On this document, she signs Yo la Batoras, which means I or me, the worst of all women, in her own blood. So Juana Inés de la Cruz died on April 17th, 1695, while treating a friend stricken by a plague in the convent at the age of 44 or 46. It is said that she is buried in the convent of Santa Paula of the Hieronymite Order of St. Jerome. Though much of her work is lost to time and her instruments, books, and most of her works were either sold, confiscated by the church, or given to charity, we can't exactly know when or if she stopped writing leading up to her death. The writings we do have are some of the most famous works of the Spanish Golden Age, which was basically the Spanish version of the Renaissance period that went from 1492 and lasted for 167 years to 1659. It is also known as the Golden Century. Her works also makes her one of the most significant and influential writers of the Spanish Baroque literacy movement. The Baroque period, which we have talked about the Baroque period in some of our other women videos that focus more on art, lasted from 1600 to 1750 and was known for the clarity and exaggeration in the creation of drama, satire, disappointment, and criticism of beauty and religion. Even though in her lifetime she was seen as basically a sinner, Sister Juana is now a national icon of Mexico and Mexican identity. She is classified as a proto-feminist, which is a term used for women in eras where feminism wasn't known and the woman would be seen as a feminist today. So she was truly ahead of her time. Again, she said, let us women protect ourselves by teaching us the things that us older women have learned, and said, we can't please men no matter what the flip we do. She towed a fine line between what was socially acceptable and unacceptable role for women in 17th century Mexico, especially in the influence on race, social norms, and especially religion. She became associated with the Virgin of Guadalupe, who was not only a religious symbol of Mexican identity, but connected to Aztec goddesses. This is mainly due to her Villancico 224 or Carol 224. This song she wrote in Nahuatl, that Aztec language she just randomly decided to learn on a Wednesday when she was like 5. This seems to be the only carol she wrote in Nahuatl. Her other carols she wrote in Spanish. In 1978, she first appeared on the 100 peso AA bill and was honored again between 1994 and 2020, this time on the 200 peso CD, D1, and F banknote. She is also currently on the 100 peso G bill. This one has an excerpt from her poem, Foolish Men. Quote, foolish men who accuse women without reason, without seeing that you create the very fault that you identify. End quote. I'm telling you, this woman was ahead of her time when it comes to men. This bill has been in circulation since 2020. In 1979, the convent she lived in for over 25 years, the St. Jerome Convent, was reopened and renamed the University of the Cloister of Sor Juana. Then on October 31st, 2018, the school honored Sister Juana and Frida Kahlo with a symbolic altar called Las Dos Juanas that was made specially for the Day of the Dead. The school recently unveiled this adorable statue of Sister Juana looking at a cat on January 22nd, 2024. The statue highlights the silent dialogue between them. It's so freaking cute, isn't it? This school, quick sidebar, because I did my deep dive and I went into a hole. I had to know more and I went into a hole, and you all have to know this because the world is kind of scary and kind of sucks right now, and so any kind of happiness that we can bring, we love it. This school has an odd love for cats. Stay with me here. For the love of God, please. Reportedly, when the school was being renovated, cat skeletons were found buried and more cats just kept appearing. When the school opened, they decided to keep the now tradition of cats on the property, and they wanted to help control the population of abandoned cats and kittens. The population on the property at one point was over 100 cats. And after spay and neutering, adopting, and a public education and public awareness campaign, I love that, the abandoned cat population slowly got under control. Currently, there are about 20 cats that live on the property, and some teachers allow the cats to come into classes. They also have a part of the school specifically for the cats where students can hang out and pet them. This patio is called Patio de los Gatos, or the cat's yard, or courtyard of the cats. They even did this awesome artwork of a cat on Sister Juana's head. Excellent. Yes. Yes. Anyway, I had to tell you that. Back on track. In April of 1995, Sister Juana's name was inscribed in gold on the Mexican Congress Wall of Honors. The town where she grew up in, San Miguel Nepantla, was renamed Nepantla de Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. The Episcopal Church of the United States gave final approval in 2022 to add her feast to the liturgical calendar, or the calendar of the church year, which is the official calendar of the Episcopal Church and honors important and influential people of the Christian religion. Think of Martin Luther King Day or the 4th of July. Sister Juana's feast day is April 18th. She has been in theater, books, music, movies, and TV shows. I think the best pop culture thing that happened to her is in 1962 when a telenovela titled after her was made about her life. A telenovela is a Mexican version of soap operas, and I freaking love telenovelas and soap operas. The acting is bad, the music is bad, but who cares because the drama's juicy. Though she didn't make a difference in her lifetime after her death, and thanks to many people, she is now a huge symbol in Catholic sainthood and Mexico. Her forward views of freedom of speech, women's rights, sexual diversity, and religion have been an endearing mark on feminism and religion. She challenged the church's and men's views on women and called for women of her era to have access to education. Her mind was complex and multi-layered, making us question ourselves in her writings. Her unwavering passion and determination to be educated in a time when women were never given a chance to shows that we all should have the same passion and determination to better educate ourselves. She reportedly, poignantly wrote over 300 years ago, quote, "I am not who you think I am, but you have given me another being with your pens, another breath through your lips. And unlike my own self, I wander among your pens, not as I really am, but as you want me to be." Oh, my head hurts. I love going around the world and learning about all these women, but I already have a very strong American accent, and B, with my stammer, I cannot explain to you how hard it is to say some of these words because I cannot do it sometimes. And I really ask you guys to give me leniency. I can't even pronounce English words correctly sometimes. Sometimes even the word schedule is hard for me to say, much less different words of different languages. So when I say I do my very best, I really do my very, very best. But anyway, who would have thought a nun in 17th century Mexico had such forward-thinking views on women and religion and love, especially men? Who would have thought though? Like, she is amazing. If you learned something today, and I sure hope you did, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And while you're down there, please leave a friendly comment. I will see you in my next video. But until then, don't be well behaved. You just might make herstory. See you next time, guys.